Welcome to Module 4, Evidence-Based Interventions for CSI and ATSI Schools, presented by Federal and State Education Programs. By the end of Module 4, participants will be able to identify the meaning of evidence-based interventions, view resources and guidance to help them identify possible evidence-based interventions that can be implemented at the school site, review the Resource Inequities section of the Resource Inequities Evidence-Based Interventions tab of the SPSA. What is an evidence-based intervention? Evidence is a powerful tool to identify ways to address education problems and build knowledge on what works. Evidence-based interventions are both federal and state regulations. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act emphasizes the use of evidence-based activities, strategies, and interventions, collectively referred to as interventions. Per California Education Code, all Title I schools are required to implement evidence-based interventions that meet federal standards per the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, defines an evidence-based intervention as being supported by strong evidence, moderate evidence, promising evidence, or evidence that demonstrates a rationale. For comprehensive support and improvement, schools, CSI schools, must implement interventions meeting the strong, moderate, or promising ratings. Additional targeted support and improvement schools, or ATSI schools, and other Title I schools that were not identified by the state should implement an evidence-based intervention that meets any of the ratings noted above. An example of an evidence-based intervention that meets the criteria of strong is Read 180. In a moment, I'll show you where I found that information. Guidance and resources. Our first guidance resource found in the Resource Inequities Evidence-Based Interventions tab of the School Plan for Student Achievement is the non-regulatory guidance. The purpose of this guidance is to provide information to assist schools in selecting and using evidence-based activities, strategies, and interventions. This guidance also includes the criteria that determines how an intervention is categorized as strong, moderate, etc. On the next slide, we'll see an example of an evidence-based intervention. The second resource is titled Resource for Identifying Evidence-Based Interventions. This document can also be found on the Evidence-Based Interventions section of the Resource Inequities Evidence-Based Interventions section tab of the SPSA. This document provides links for schools to use to help identify specific types of interventions, along with their ratings. This document also contains vendors or interventions that are on the LAUSD Evidence-Based Interventions bench. As mentioned before, Read 180 is an evidence-based intervention that is categorized as strong. Using the Resource for Identifying Evidence-Based Interventions tool, you can scroll down to this area where it has links to evidence for ESSA, What Works Clearinghouse, top tier evidence, and much more. So if I click on evidence for ESSA, and I click on the search item, I can type in Read 180, or I can also search by reading, math, social emotional, attendance, science, or writing. But in this particular case, I'll go ahead and I'll search for Read 180. And here, by searching for a specific evidence-based intervention, a Read 180 pops up, and in this particular case, it's noted as strong. Now, in some cases, some of the evidence-based intervention will not show up in evidence for ESSA. For that reason, it's important to Look through the other resources like What Works Clearinghouse or Top Tier Interventions to research some of the evidence-based interventions. And in some cases, they will not be listed in any of the links. And in those particular cases, it is important to search for particular case studies that would go ahead and signify if your evidence-based intervention is strong, strong or promising, or any of the other categories. What if your intervention is not on the LAUSD bench or found in any of the provided links? In many cases, that is exactly what will happen. The intervention, if not found in any of the links, is not supported with enough research to categorize it as strong, moderate, or promising. That intervention might still be one that the school implements, however, with fidelity, and they do see gains. But it does not meet the ESSA standards. However, in many cases, schools, as mentioned before, can do their own research and identify case studies that support the intervention as being strong, moderate, or promising. An example of this would be the program ALEX. While we are not advocating for ALEX, this program is used across our district in many of our school sites to support math instruction. In the case of ALEX, and using the same steps that we did for Read 180, we can do a search for ALEX on the site Evidence for ESSA. The intervention does appear after doing the same search, but in this particular case, it has a note that there are no studies that they have on record that ALEX meets the ESSA requirements. However, a school can do their own search for case studies. Keep in mind that the search for case studies should be from reputable sources or from third parties that will provide an objective and thorough analysis. Oftentimes, search results will be testimonials or vendor-based analysis only. Continuing with ALEX as an example, the school conducted a search for the case study and came across an analysis from ScholarWorks at Georgia State University that showed a significant positive linear relationship between the concept mastery reports and the formative summative assessment reports, meaning there is a direct relationship between the ALEX concept mastery and the assessments. Completing the evidence-based intervention section of the SPSA. Within the SPSA, there is a built-in tab to address the resource inequity and evidence-based interventions. This tab is located on the far left-hand navigation above the main goal pages. It consists of a series of questions, some of which are checkboxes, and others require additional information. For prompt 1, identify the student subgroup or subgroups that will be the focus on the school's identified evidence-based intervention. Consider how the intervention is designed and will be implemented to help the school meet the specific needs of a given subgroup. For prompt 2, indicate the California School Dashboard performance indicators that are being targeted with the identified intervention. The school's evidence-based intervention should help the school achieve measurable gains in all of the checked areas. In prompts 3 and 4, the school must identify the rating of the evidence-based intervention that will be stated in prompt 6 and specifically cite the source used to determine the quality of the evidence-based intervention. The link in question 3 is the guidance referenced on slide number 7. For prompt 5, indicate whether the school is already implementing the identified intervention or will be implementing it for the first time. For prompt 6, identify the school's evidence-based intervention with sufficient specificity. Example, ALEX, Curriculum Associates, iReady, Phonics Chip Kits, advanced multisyllable, the 95% group, etc. For prompt 7, provide a summary description of the identified evidence-based intervention, including the school's plan for implementing, setting, frequency, schedule, personnel, etc. If the intervention entails the expenditure of funds, please identify the source of funding that the school will be using. For prompt 8, address how the school will ensure high-quality implementation of its identified evidence-based intervention. Address the frequency, the method, and positions responsible for monitoring the implementation. Copy and paste the relevant measurable objectives for the targeted student subgroup from the school's SPSA. If the school is continuing to implement an evidence-based intervention, answered in number 5, it is expected and presumed that the school's own student subgroup performance data demonstrates the effectiveness of the intervention. In this section, discuss the data that shows how the intervention is improving outcomes for students in the targeted subgroups at the school. Do you still need support to understand and complete the evidence-based intervention section of the SPSA? If you are in need of support, each of our local districts has a local district Title I coordinator that can assist. Or you can also contact federal and state education programs, where you can receive assistance from our Program and Policy Development Advisor, our Plan Writing Coordinator, or our specialists. Thank you.